wanted to talk a little bit about this judge and Jason Autry. And yesterday, the rabbit hole I went down yesterday, for the sake of keeping it simple, just going to use the clips I pulled yesterday for over on X, but I know not everybody here on YouTube is over there. So I said, manufacturing a conviction, the good old boys system. And this is what Jason Autry used to describe, his arrest, to the statements he gave, to his testimony, and then to his recanting. So I said, here's a brief overview of the role Jason Autry's testimony in the Zachary Adams trial. So first, we're going to have a clip of Judge Creed McGinley. That's the trial judge that we're watching now, presiding over this 2017 trial. He's now retired, so all the post-conviction proceedings have been under Judge Bradbury. So this clip, it's going to mute. The court's going to mute. But this is before a proceeding for Jason Autry. And this is where he'll ultimately take a plea. But the court, when they go into session, the judge says, hey, I heard that we don't need a trial date anymore, but I'm not sure. That's all I heard from the defense attorneys. But this is before anything has happened. Look where he's going to go over and have a conversation. And the cameraman zooms right in. Yep, talking to the Bobos. So there was that. So I saw that yesterday, and I was astonished to see that Judge, when I watch trials, Judge will come out of chambers. Judge isn't out walking around the gallery having conversations, let alone having conversations with one side or the other. So, another clip from the same hearing.
I was informed by defense counsel fairly early on, and they didn't tell me something had been worked out. They just said we will not be needing a trial date. And I had said prior to that, we were still in Decatur County. That's why I looked back and saw Miss Nichols, and you guys were both there. You guys, as well as all the other attorneys, were there. And I think you probably remember me saying, if I was involved in this case from a defense standpoint, it would be a race to 201 Poplar. You remember me saying that?
So this is the judge saying if he was in the defendant's shoes, he'd be running to basically tell and get the sweetheart type of plea first. And in my opinion, he's already aware that that's what Jason's about to do, is take this plea. And he's saying, smart move, smart move. All four of them should have been doing this.
And apparently you folks won the race.
You won the race.
Sometime after that, the attorneys got together with the prosecutors. There was a proffer in this case. Actually, Mr. Autry met with attorneys and prosecutors and went through the route of what he testified to at the trial. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So we're ready to proceed now. You want to announce the basic terms of this plea agreement?
Yes, sir. Are we far enough away?
You are. I don't know about him.
I can talk through it. I can through it.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Make sure the court reporter can hear you.
All right. I'll talk as loud as I can. Actually, 3 years ago to this day, Mr. Autry testified in this courtroom and told the jury and I guess the world, as it were, what happened April 13th of 2011. In this courtroom then and in this courtroom today, Karen Bobo, Dana Bobo, they're here. And they are in support and agreement with this guilty plea, which takes into account the realities of the prosecution before Mr. Autry cooperated, and then takes into account the importance of his cooperation and his credible, truthful testimony at trial.
I addressed earlier at the motion for new trial on the co-defendant. His testimony was some of the most credible, persuasive testimony I've ever heard given in a courtroom.
And it answered many questions that were left open factually in the investigation. It answered many questions that Karen and Dana had about what happened to their daughter. And it was a very important piece in getting justice for Holly. This guilty plea is to 17 CR 10, counts 3.
So what we're watching there is, again, we have a judge bolstering, saying that Jason Autry's testimony was some of the most credible he's seen in his life. Knowing what we know now in hindsight, I personally think there were inconsistencies within Jason Autry's testimony if you just consider his testimony in a bubble. So that's problem one. But two, during the trial, Jennifer Thompson, attorney for Zachary Adams, really didn't drive home the point strongly enough that Jason Autry had all of his discovery available to him. And each one of the key, very specific details that he was able to pull out were things that he was pulling out from the investigative reports and the statements from the witnesses. And, you know, that's where you get things like, and Zach told me that Brian Vitt was mowing the lawn. Well, in his discovery folder, he has access to a statement from Vitt saying, I was mowing the lawn that morning. But the jury's not keeping it top of mind when they're making their considerations to somebody's credibility, especially since they're not being prompted to even consider the fact that Jason Autry would have any other way of knowing those details unless the truth of the matter asserted, Zach told him. Personal knowledge. So, and then after the fact, you're getting indication here that this judge the whole time had already made a credibility assessment. I've got a few other clips I want to show you, but before we go to what I put in this tweet, there's one other part that if I had space in a tweet to put 5 videos, I would have done it. But I want to jump us over to this clip from the post-conviction proceedings with defense attorney Jerry Gonzalez.
In my mind is at one point during the break, the judge approached me, and again, I don't know why me, but he approached me and he said, you need to tell your client to take a plea to save his life. And I found that to be really not only strange, but very out of line. I've never had a judge tell that to me. And I told the judge, I said, well, that's really my client's decision to make. I'm not going to try and convince him to do one or the other. And then we left it at that. The other thing that really stood out to me was one time, I can't remember who was on the witness stand. The state was examining the witness, and we suddenly started hearing football announcers coming from the bench. And the judge sort of started scrambling and you know, messing with what I thought was an iPad or something on his in front of him. And he said something like, oh, I don't know how that happened. That tells me that he was watching football during the trial. I mean, my jaw dropped. I've never, ever experienced, as a Secret Service agent testifying in federal court, as a lawyer, knowing that a judge was watching football during a trial, much less a trial where a man was.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. You want me to pull up the football clip? I'll pull it up.
Being considered to be put to death. My impression was that he either had already made up his mind.
It happened twice, but I'm going to pull up one of them.
And the sentence, or he just didn't care. Which, to either one, I'm just speechless thinking about that.
The last thing I'd like to ask you about is after the guilty or the verdict was rendered and you guys moved into.
I have it timestamped as 7 hours, 18 minutes. Maybe I put it in here.
Yes, I think we had.
Oh, wrong clip. I went to Jerry Gonzalez. Oops, I made a mistake. I thought I timestamped. I searched my notes when the video blurted out in court, but maybe I didn't. It was like our first trial day stream, though. We heard the video just blare, and the judge had to silence his phone. And then, like 45 minutes later, the same thing happened. So there was that. And then rounding out this context, we went into, Autry himself describing how and why he fabricated his testimony. So I think it's important. I have a small clip here of the pressure, the plea deal, the expectation of leniency from Jason Autry's testimony.
Testifying here today, you're telling the jury today that you have absolutely no knowledge that what you do here might affect the federal sentence that you have to serve of 100 months.
I do not. I have immunity with the federal government. Other than that, there's no deal. Plain and simple.
Right, but there's a potential deal. It remains out there.
You're saying that, not me.
I'm asking you if you're aware that there's a possible deal that could be made in the future.
Have you ever heard of it happening before?
Yes. Have you?
Just then.
Okay, so your federal deal, I
thought there was a difference between state court and federal court. Obviously, I was wrong.
In your federal case, you face a potential death sentence in a federal case if this killing occurred on federal property. Isn't that right?
No, I've been given immunity.
Well, but that's what you were given immunity from, were any federal charges.
I don't know what I was given immunity for. You'll have to ask Mr. Scholl. He's the counsel that I did not handle that.
All right. And then the recanting. This is from his recanting interview where he tells us how he put the story together.
Goddamn, what do they want? I need to know what they want. What do they want from me?
Yeah.
I want you to testify. Straight up about it. They need someone to understand. State needs a mouthpiece. And I said, for mine, I'll go free. He said, I think I can sell that. I said, well, go see what you can do. He was gone for a period of time. He comes back. Again, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, he comes back. He said, what was talking about? And I said, yeah. He said, can you rehearse that story for me today? I said, right now. I got you right now in front of both of y'all, come on. That'll work. That's what he said, when I got done. He said, that'll work. He said, one thing is going to seal it. And I said, what's that? He said, we're going down the river tomorrow. He said, I want you to walk and do everything out. I said, all right.
So did you tell him a version of the story then at that point?
Yeah.
Was it the same? I mean, what changed over the course of
I got the version of the story from him and Clark Chapman.
How did they feed you that?
Well, it was given to me through phone records or, questions and stuff going on. Like, I said one time to him, I said, whoa, they knew I was over at Shane's house. And I said, well, what if I say all I seen was just a body, laying in the back of the truck? That's not enough to get you out. I said, so I got to see the damn shoe. He said, if you go play with them, you might as well go all the way, Jason. So we went all the way.
How did you find out how did you find out she was shot?
The TBI, the day the skull was found, the TBI went down there to Dottie's and announced it. We just found her skull, bullet hole in the back, 38 caliber bullet, 35, 38 caliber.
Mm-hmm.
I seen the report, and I believe it's one of them. So I knew you right there.
You were incarcerated at the time.
Yeah, I was in River Bend.
Yeah. So how did it get from Dottie's to you?
Telephone, my mama.
Your mom? Yeah.
The first thing they done, Dottie's, was all them little girls in there run tell, big news.
Yeah.
But that's how I found out, yeah. Brent Booth told it to Dottie.
Okay, so walk me through how the story came to.
The story came just working a story. You know, when I started that timeline, I started using phone records and IR statements and stuff like that. And when people see you here and hear you there, that gives you credibility to your story.
How did you get the phone records and the IR statements?
They come
just
to me.
Gave them to you?
Yeah.
Like you had them yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had all of them.
Who brought them to you?
My attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there, ain't it?
Yeah.
I feel sorry for you if you plan on looking through it.
I have looked through it. There's a lot.
Yeah, mighty.
Mhm.
It's a paper cut.
Yeah, there's a lot. Mhm. There's a whole box of just psychics.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're putting it together.
Yeah, we put the story together in about 3 days. And, you know, and if you get a story out, you do swear to it.
Mhm.
And it's amazingly simple.
All right. So, one more thing, and then I found one of the football interruptions, but one more thing to round out this Jason Autry, the most credible testimony ever, according to trial judge Creed McKinley, is this little slip up he had when he said rehearse instead of repeat.
Wait, did he say, Natalie Bobo left me with the impression that the victim would.
I testified that I didn't know exactly word for word, but what I could remember of the conversation. As I told you before, I couldn't rehearse word for word. You asked me that. I can't.
Okay, so that's.
I couldn't rehearse word for word. Oops. And that's why I think it's so important that we have this interview of him recanting, where I think he's much more he's much more credible in his recant than he was on the stand. And again, his trial testimony conflicts with things that we now have available, mainly the alibi evidence, the ATM video, phone records, the mapping of the locations of the different devices throughout the day that Marshall Walker wasn't able to present at trial because of ineffective assistance of counsel, as well as the issues with the firearms. We have a .380 auto casing found, and that doesn't match this story of the rusty revolver. And then one of the football bits, guys. There was a second one, I believe, later in the day. I believe this was the first one. This was after he'd already turned himself over to the jury and said, "Do we have any Tigers fans here? What if I could get you guys some tickets? I'm going to try to get you guys some tickets." This was later that same day. Oh my God, that's a football. So it ends up happening again later. And Jerry Gonzalez, who we heard testifying at the post-conviction hearing, saying that the judge was watching football, he's crossed at that same post-conviction hearing, and he maintains, he goes, "No, I know he was watching football." So good times. Good times. Yeah, MLS says the rehearse and repeat is just an unintelligent person slip. Big words, getting them confused. So there we go, guys. There we go. This was a Terry Britt trial testimony watch. I'm so interested in deep diving into this case. Maybe tomorrow we can get together, and we've got some bits and pieces from post-conviction stuff that we haven't watched. We've got some news coverage from like 11 years ago that maybe we could watch. We could just keep watching the trial. We could read. I couldn't find the original petition for the new trial, but I see 2 amended versions from here. So the Tennessee courts, their website, since this is a high-profile case, they put the 2024 and 2025 documents up here. But the first one I see is the petition for writ of error quorum nobis, which was short. and then a petition to amend. And these are both filed at the same time. And I believe there was like a January 9th filing that I don't see here. And then there's a second amended petition. So there's a ton of context within those two. The second amended was like 30 something pages. The first one I read through was like 11, but there was a ton of stuff in there. Maybe we could get together and read that tomorrow.